I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that.
Again, spot on.
Done. Fucking spot on. And on that magnificent clap, welcome to another episode of the At Random podcast, our first of 2021.
You can't use the
2020.
You can't use the clap as a guide-in because the clap is
Yeah,
never
I
in the
can.
episode.
It is now.
God damn it! I'm always in free speech jail, and you can say whatever you want, Mr. Mustache.
Yeah.
We need to talk about it, by the way. Did you just wink at me through the camera?
Yeah.
Did you just
Yeah.
went this?
Yeah.
Oh,
We know
you fucking you're getting on 2021 like crazy horny, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I love
fuck.
I mean, everyone knows that if you grow a mustache, you become 10 times more sleazy.
Yeah, you do. That wink was like, I feel somewhat raped.
Good. That was the intention.
All right, well,
That's why you need to shave it.
To be fair, Ali, the only reason I have it is because you hate it. So I was like, fuck it.
I can't fucking, like, there is somebody that mustache reminds me of, and I know it's a serial killer. I just don't know which one.
I don't know.
I can't.
Camper? He looks like
No.
Campers.
And if you join our Discord server, you can see
You
it
can
too and see
enjoy
how
the
much of a
mustache.
rapist I look
Yeah.
like.
Link in the description down below.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, how are you guys doing? How is your beginning of 2021 going? I mean,
Same,
it's like 3 days old, but
yeah, same as the end of 2020. Like, there's nothing really different. Like, I had to wake up my wife to say Happy New Year's because she was already asleep, and like it wasn't like a big festivity with our play.
can you
house.
remind me what you call your wife again? What's your pet name for her?
Oh, Honey Boo Boo Buns is what I call her.
That is not what
Every
you said
day.
before the episode.
It's just I wake up and I'm like, "Hey, baby, sweetie pie."
You have to share what you call her before
I
Ali broke
call
the fabric of your
her
reality.
My little Pop-Tart cake is what I call her.
He really doesn't. But one day he'll tell us when he's ready.
Mm-hmm.
Ali, how are you doing?
I'm alright. I'm doing fine.
Yeah, it's better than usual.
Yeah. What do you call your wife? What's your nickname for each other? I'm interested.
Usually I just say Batman.
Batman, yeah.
Like, literally.
What
Mhm.
do you have a nickname for Alex? Like
Dickhead.
Dickhead, yeah. There has to be dick involved.
Mostly.
You know.
Yeah, it's pretty common one.
Yeah.
Or she'll just say Cherry if I'm not listening to
Yeah.
her. Because I won't
Yeah.
respond to if she says Alex
his
sometimes.
yeah, it's his last name. So for
Yeah,
the people
my
that
last
Or I
that aren't-
go Alex Sakimo. Like what his mom calls
Yeah,
him.
that's like the Greek, like the cute way to say like Alexander, like a boy called Alexander in Greek,
Yeah.
like, a young boy. So she says that sometimes.
Do you ever go when you're pissed? Do you ever go like Alexander Cherry?
Alexander Michael Cherry.
Yeah. His full name?
Yeah.
Do you go
Yes.
full? Oh, you know what? I've been spared that my whole life. Like nobody. I don't think anybody knows my full name, but like I've been spared like the front and the last name my entire life, which I'm very grateful for.
Andy Buzz Lightyear.
To infinity.
Androlomew.
Well, actually, he should be Andy Woody
Androlomew.
Androlomew. Yeah.
I think wait, I do know my like the people that would have adopted me if my parents would have died, because they're the brother and the sister of my parents. So I think for me it would be Andy, Eddie, Marina, Cadron.
That's too many names for me.
Yep.
So what is your nickname? What is
His
Vicky-
name is literally a nickname.
No, but what does Vicky call him? Pet name.
Oh, we usually say Kappa. Kappa, which is basically just honey. It's just the usual shit.
Thank you for continuing to prove me that Flemish is truly disgusting
That
language.
sounded fine. She is
sometimes
racist.
I say capabuenche, or maybe I could call you buenche. Sometimes I could say that, or like Cappadocia, or like.
In my mind, these are all forms of whore or prostitute, so you should probably stop.
Of he vullen pekpetende slatten.
Yes. Hilarious.
You would
Good
love
one.
that one because that's actually you cock guzzling whore, is what I said.
Jesus Christ. Well, that's made this segue into what the fuck we're talking about pretty difficult.
Oh,
but,
yay!
yeah, you guys don't know yet. So this one, we've had a couple of like soft hitters, shall we say, to round out 2020. So now we're back. We're back.
You
want to
You want to go 2 or 3 episodes on this one? I was like, holy fuck! Big boy got plans.
I'm not sure. Well, the reason is, and the second I say why, you're going to understand, like what it is, you're going to understand why. Mm-hmm. And it's just because like there's so much you could talk about because no one actually knows what the fuck happened.
Okay.
So we can speculate as much as we want.
Okay.
So what we're going to talk about. So the inspiration for this is I've been watching a lot of air crash investigations lately on YouTube.
Okay.
Do you guys remember in 2014 when that Malaysian Airways flight just like disappeared
Yeah.
off the face of the earth?
But wasn't
We're gonna
there like
fucking talk
parts
about
of it
that.
find?
Yeah. Well, you're skipping ahead. You're skipping ahead.
Okay. Yeah.
But we're gonna delve into that because the more I read about it, the more like shit just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And there's actually a conspiracy theory I kind of believe in, and for once you'll hear me actually talk about a conspiracy.
Will you cover aliens?
No, it's not to do with aliens.
Then I have to do it. Then I have to do it. It has to happen.
So how I see this is part one. We're just going to sort of go with like the timeline, what happened, well, what they think happened, because they don't fully know.
Will we go
then
over the text messages as well?
No, that will be in the next one, because there's so much. I already have so many fucking notes. I was like, I can't do all this in one.
All right,
It
well,
was too
fucking
much.
let's get into it, boy.
And then eventually, maybe in part 2 or part 3, if it's needed, we're going to talk about the like conspiracy theories that people have about it, and that's going to be the fun part.
Yeah. So first, we're gonna do 2 episodes boring, and then we're gonna actually talk about the reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true. All right, so if you're like, anyone more than like 18 years old should probably remember this.
Something like that, yeah.
Like, March 8th, 2014,
Yeah.
a Malaysian Airlines flight, code MH370, literally disappeared on the 8th of March, 2014. It took off from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia on its way to Beijing in China on a Boeing 777-200ER plane, which there's only been, I think there was only 7 incidents ever with that plane.
Okay.
And this is kind of important later on when they get into the investigation. So there's only ever been, I think, 3 crashes. One of them is this one. One of them was a couple months after this when another Malaysian Airlines plane got shot down over Ukraine by Russian militants.
Yeah.
And then another one was another accident like the early 2000s or late 90s.
Wasn't that like a big kerfuffle as well? That was
they thought it was like
that
a
was
plane
like
with
on the
Putin
brink
on it.
of war, right? Like Russia was really pissed off at that, and they didn't know what was going on, but they soothed things over, sort of.
Yeah, it was Russia was invading Ukraine or fighting with Ukraine.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
something like that.
And then Ukraine. Oh no, I think there were Russian-backed Ukrainians used a surface air missile and they shot down the plane because they thought by the markings it looked like the plane that Putin would be on.
Yeah,
because it has like the Malaysia Airlines has the red, white, blue colors like the Russian flag. So something like that. But we're not talking about that one. But that was one of the only other crashes. And then there was like a couple fires on runways, but that's it. And this is kind of important. So like basically this plane really safe. Really safe plane. Almost never heard of having crashes, basically. On the flight, there was 12 crew and 227 passengers from 14 countries. So 239 people in total. The passenger manifest was released like on the day the plane disappeared by Malaysia Airlines, but was later modified. Another little tidbit, keep this in mind. It was later modified because there was actually 2 Iranian passengers traveling on stolen passports on that flight. One was using an Austrian passport and one was using an Italian passport. So keep that in mind for later on when we get to the conspiracy. So already there's a couple things here. All of the 12 crew, so the 2 pilots and the 10 cabin staff were all Malaysian citizens. The commanding pilot was 53-year-old Captain Zahir Ahmed Shah. He joined Malaysia Airlines as a cadet in 1981, so he'd worked there for 33 years at this point. He had a total flying time of 18,365 hours, which is 765 days. So this guy's been in the air for literally 2 years of his life.
Yeah.
He's been in place. So very experienced pilot.
Yeah.
He was also a registered instructor and examiner to teach other people to fly.
Okay.
Since 2007. So very well-respected pilot. He had a YouTube channel. You can actually look. He had a big flight simulator at home and stuff, and he did videos showing how to flight simulator and giving insights to what international pilots do and stuff like that.
Jeez, okay.
It's just quite interesting. The other co-pilot was a 27-year-old First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, who joined Malaysia Airlines as a cadet in 2007. In November 2013, he actually, 6 months before this flight, was when he began actually training to fly this type of aircraft.
Okay.
So for people that don't know, it's when you get to an international airline, you don't just be like, oh, you can fly any plane. They train them on a specific type of planes that they have. So this guy had done some smaller Airbus planes, and then he was going up.
Yeah.
Because this is one of the biggest planes there is.
Mm-hmm.
This flight was actually his final training before the next flight he was scheduled to be examined.
Okay.
To basically be certified, so he could, instead of being the co-pilot, he could become the pilot, the captain.
Yeah.
So this was his last training day, basically.
Last training day, yeah. So another little thing there to keep in mind for later. So you can see here already, there's a couple threads you could pull in different directions.
Yeah.
You can look at it from different ways.
Yeah.
This guy, Farik, he had 2,763 hours of flying experience, so that's 115 days.
Okay.
Of the 227 passengers on board, 153 were Chinese citizens because it was going to Beijing, including a family of 6 who were in a group of artists that were coming back from an exhibition in Kuala Lumpur. So basically that whole family just got wiped out from this incident.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, which is quite horrible.
And the bloodline right there.
Yep. And this is one that I want to come back to. I will come back to later, but probably in the next episode. There were 20 passengers on this flight, 12 Malaysian and 8 Chinese, that were employees of a company called Freescale Semiconductor.
And what?
They were, a few days after the crash, we'll get into it later, but there was a patent filed by this company, allegedly, for I think it was a stealth radar technology. And 4 of the people on this flight had a 20% ownership of that patent, and the company had the other 20%.
Okay.
So we'll keep that in mind.
All right. Yeah,
We'll
there's a lot to keep in mind here,
So
people.
you can see here, there's a lot of... This is why it has to be... There's too much shit.
Yeah.
So a bunch of loose threads at this point.
But at this point, let me ask you now, if you, from just this basic information, would you see this, is there anyone immediately jumps out as suspicious to you?
Yeah, aliens. That definitely the Grays. This has Grays written all over it. No. Yeah, I guess, I don't know. No? Everything seems somewhat normal to me. You got a pilot, with a lot of hours. You got a pilot that's, on the ending end of his co-pilot.
Training.
Yeah, of his co-pilot training, which seems pretty much normal. And then you have the whole it's not like that airline was that much involved with big scandals and shit like that.
Those
money
employers
wise,
from the companies seemed a bit sus.
The employees from the company? Freescale Semiconductor? Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the stolen passport sounds a bit weird, but...
I think they did look into that, and they didn't think there was any terrorist on there. They think they were just trying to get asylum.
The employer was the imposter. And,
Yeah.
The family of 6 backed them up. It was the family of 6. I'm putting everything I have on the family of 6.
Yeah, they hijacked the plane.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
see, now you're speaking my language,
right?
Ali.
Yeah, but that's why I wanted to, because seriously, we can start spitballing ideas here because no one fucking knows what happened to this flight.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it's really interesting.
Me and Ali are definitely gonna figure this out by the end of this episode.
So
No need
we're
for
gonna
a
figure
part
it out
2.
when no one else knows anything about it. The rest of the world is clueless, but us two, the biggest idiots in the world, are gonna figure it out.
No, we're gonna figure it out. But it's gotta be done and done. No need for part 2.
Isn't it suspicious that with all the radar technology, all the stuff, satellite imagery we have of the Earth and stuff, they couldn't find this plane?
It's a cover up. It's weird.
It just seems a bit convenient.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, for the people to keep that in context, I always like to keep things in context for people that are listening. You know, you can literally, with the satellites we have in 2021, you know, we can literally see a high definition visual picture of a mouse in the desert. Like, literally. There's no... Like, what we get as people, what we get as just, you know, regular Joes and Jills is just a scratch of what is possible. These high-end fucking corporations, they can literally fucking make a high-definition picture from a mouse in space. So that's where we're at. And they're telling us that they cannot find an airplane that had a trajectory and that had a trajectory and all that shit, and you know, didn't deviate from it or anything. They didn't deviate, did they?
We're gonna get there.
We're gonna most of this flight have like tracking devices, so you can actually see the tracking.
And we're gonna get into pretty much right now. We're getting into sort of the timeline of events, which is when things start getting a bit weird.
Yeah.
And which will answer some of your questions.
Yeah.
So let's begin. Right. So this is the timeline of as events unfolded. It was like less than an hour, I think, when it disappeared off radar. So it's a very short time. It wasn't like they flew for 8 hours and then it just fucking vanished. It was very quick after leaving the airport. But anyway, so the flight was scheduled to depart Kuala Lumpur Airport at 12:35 a.m. So in the night, local time. Yep. So it was a night flight basically, and arrive at Beijing at 6:30 in the morning Beijing time. It's one of 2 daily flights that Malaysia Airways was operating to Beijing, and the flight takes about 5.5 hours planned flight time. The aircraft was carrying, and this is something we have to keep in mind, but I'll come back to these statistics so you don't have to keep them in your head right now. But the aircraft had 49,100 kilograms of fuel, which is enough for 7 hours and 31 minutes of flight time. So they had an extra 2 hours of fuel on board. You know, just in case there was an emergency, they had to go to another airport.
I mean, airplanes burn through a lot of fucking fuel. How much did they have?
49,100 kilos, so 49 tons.
49,000. I can drive a month on 60 euros.
Yep. And you wonder why your air flight is expensive.
Holy shit.
Yep. So this, for a Freedom Unit people, it's 108,200 pounds.
Yeah.
Was on board. So they have 2 hours of extra leeway because every time they schedule a flight, they plan if there was an emergency and they had to go further to a different airport. Like maybe there was an emergency at Beijing airport, like another plane crashed or something, and they had to divert. They calculate like where's the next airport this plane can land. Yeah. So we need fuel to get there. All right. And they do 2 airports because this is a big airplane. It can't just land on like some fucking strip in Bob in Kentucky's fucking airstrip in farm. You know, it needs a 4 kilometer long runway or something.
Yeah, with the right like length and shit like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And the lights and the guy with the sausages in his hands just going.
The guy raving out there by himself with his headphones on.
All right, let's go.
So, supposed to take off at 12:35 a.m. We all know planes never actually take off when they're fucking supposed to.
No.
So it took off at 12:42. So 7 minutes after.
There's always one fat American keeping the plane down on the ground for a little couple of minutes longer.
He had to get that extra beer in.
Yeah.
The co-pilot did all the communication with air traffic control when they were like during taxi and on the ground, like you know, in the pre-flight and all that. And then when they took off, the captain took over communication. So make of that what you will as we go further into this.
Wait, the pilot did what?
So the co-pilot did the communication with air traffic control, the tower that tells. So he did all the communication when they were on the ground before takeoff.
Okay.
But the second they took off, the captain took over all communication with air traffic control.
Whose job is it normally to do that? Is it the captain or the co-pilot?
I don't know. I'm not a pilot. I assume in this case because it was the guy's last training, maybe he sort of get here like you take most of the reins.
You take the rein and then I'll lift up. Yeah, or exactly. He was getting a blowjob by one of the stewardesses.
Exactly. Maybe just taking a shit during takeoff.
Yeah.
So hey, you got this, buddy. So plane takes off 12:42 a.m. Kuala Lumpur time. Shortly after the takeoff, the flight comms were transferred. So air traffic control looks after at the airport, and then they have like another station in the more general area, so like a longer range. Yeah, that's called a Lumpur radar.
Well, look at you with your big more fancy words. Okay.
Yeah, it's for Kuala Lumpur radar. It's basically their like national guidance for the planes. So when the planes are coming in, but maybe they're like 100, 200 kilometers away, they are in charge.
I'd imagine it just goes as far as the airspace, like the legal airspace goes.
Yes, exactly.
I guess. Yeah.
And these guys are in charge until they leave Malaysian airspace, and then they were going into Vietnamese airspace.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So this is, it's used, this Lumpur radar is used by like en route traffic. So if you're on your way into land, but not quite close enough to the airport, they'll guide you, make sure you're at the right elevation, right speed, and then they hand you over to the airport when you're close enough, or vice versa if you're leaving. At 12:46, so 4 minutes after takeoff, the Lumpur radar cleared the flight to go to 35,000 feet.
Okay.
So they have to ask permission, to go at certain heights to make sure that they're not going to like crash into another plane or whatever.
Yeah, of course.
At 1:01, so 15 minutes later, the flight confirmed back to them that they had reached 35,000 feet and were at the correct height. And they confirmed again at 1:08, so 26 minutes after takeoff. So there's been a bit of communication back and forth with air traffic control in the first sort of half an hour of the flight.
Yeah.
Now, the fun part. The aircraft's final transmission. So this isn't from the pilots. This is the actual plane.
Yeah.
So planes have like an automated positioning system that pings every now and then to a satellite that then relays that to the ground so that they know where it is and they get information.
Are we going to cover those pings?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yep, they ping the system using a aircraft communication reporting protocol at 1:06 in the morning, so just after they got to the right elevation. The signal sent to a satellite, relayed to the ground, and the data provided contained things like the plane's registration number and how much fuel was remaining and things like that.
Okay.
So at this point, they have 43,800 kilos of fuel left. So in the space of half an hour, they've burnt 5.5 tons of fuel. Just taking off from the airport.
Christ.
Is that normal or is
no, it's normal, but
euros for a month.
Yep. But this is important because this sort of information is how they use to calculate where the plane could have ended up.
Yeah.
So this is very important. The fuel remaining is the key.
Yeah.
But the last verbal so this was at 1:06 a.m. the automated.
But
plane system, right?
I guess, like in a weird case like this, if there were, for example, a fuel leak. If there was fuel leaking or anything, you wouldn't that wouldn't be a good indicator.
No, true. Well, I mean, I guess it could be like...
it has happened on planes that like fuels began to leak out of the engines and shit like that.
Oh yeah, yep. They don't think that happened here though.
Ooh, by the way, cool fucking Mandela effects that I found. We all know the Mandela effect. I actually want to do an episode on the whole Mandela effect one day. But cool thing about the Mandela effect, where on the wings are the engines placed?
They're in the front.
Yeah. And how far forward?
Don't they usually protrude slightly out the front of the wing?
You know what? That's exactly what I thought, and it's not. It's almost halfway the engines are hanging out of the planes.
Jesus.
Look it up.
Yeah.
It's actually true.
Okay.
They come out very fucking far when you look at pictures from planes and shit and like that. And apparently that's a Mandela effect, is that people think that the engines only come out of the wings like slightly, but they're actually up front and like very far forward, like further than you would think. So that's a cool little spiffy right there, you know.
Andy's little aircraft facts.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So the plane itself, as a device, I guess, or whatever, last contacted at 1:06. But the last verbal communication to air traffic control by the pilots was at 1:19 and 30 seconds, when the captain, Zahiri, acknowledged an order from the Malaysian air traffic control to switch over to the air traffic control in Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam, because they were about to leave Malaysian airspace and go into Vietnamese airspace. So this is like standard procedure. And at this point, no concern. They're all on track, correct height, good speeds, nothing to worry about. But standard practice when air traffic control gives a direction. So what they do in this case is they tell them the radio frequency that they need to switch to, right?
Which channel to go to.
Yeah, which channel and like the frequency to communicate to the next tower.
Yeah.
And standard practice is the pilot always repeats those numbers back. Always. In this instance right here, so up until this point, every time they got a directive from air traffic control, the pilot always repeated back.
Okay.
You know, he told him to do this, he said, yep, repeated the number back. But this is what happened on this last communication. So the Lumpur radar said, Malaysian 370, so that's the flight identifier.
Yeah.
Contact Ho Chi Minh at 120.9, good night.
Coochie Minh?
Ho Chi Minh.
Ho Chi Minh. All right.
In
well, that's
Vietnam.
better.
And the pilot of MH370, the plane, all he said was, good night, Malaysian 370, like signing off with the plane. He did not repeat back the...
And this was the captain. This wasn't the co-pilot.
This was the captain. This was the really experienced guy. Did not repeat back the numbers for the radar switch.
What a fucking cunt.
Well...
It's just an indication that something is sus.
Maybe he just forgot.
But you wouldn't forget if you're a pilot that spent 2 years up in the air.
Yeah,
wouldn't
true.
you fucking wouldn't forget that?
Sometimes you can assert drama without asserting drama. If, for example, I once was a shop owner for 6 years in a video store, like a dinosaur I am. But like when we had the security system and they used to call us up, and this is like a little trick they use within security. They call you up and then they tell you like, hey, can I get the code? And you would tell the code, like the code word for yes, I am safe. And so I said, like, one day I came at the place and like the alarm went off because I was drunk, basically.
Oh, what a surprise.
Yeah. No, really, I was too drunk to type in the code, but I still had to go to work.
Jesus.
And like I typed in the wrong code 3 times, and then they called me and said, hey, we were wondering, we got the alarm, is everything okay? And I was like, well, here's the password. And I said the password, and it stayed silent. But because I was drunk, my reflexes weren't like accurate. And because I was silent, he was like, oh, Mr. Cadron, between you and me, is everything all right? Just say nothing if there is something wrong. So by saying nothing, I actually told the guy
there was something wrong.
There was something wrong. And I was like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Like, drunk. It's just, I was just a little tired and I gotta go to work now, okay? And so I hung up. But that might have been an indication from the pilot by not doing his job, like, hey, something is up. Like, that would indicate to the tower, like, oh, he's supposed to do that and he didn't do it. So did anybody question this or not?
Not at the time. It was afterwards. It became in the investigation when they listened back to the tapes. But the air traffic control Like that was it. That was the last the Malaysians heard from the
Yeah,
this
but
plane
they should have reacted to it since it came up in an investigation. I mean,
Yeah,
clearly,
maybe.
the investigators saw that, like, that was wrong. Like, why didn't they respond? So it would have been a clear indication to somebody, especially with the amount of experience this guy has had, that if he doesn't do his job 100%, then there might be something wrong. Unless this has been a reoccurring thing, like, oh, it's just Greg. Greg doesn't. When he signs off, he's just a dick, and he doesn't do what he's supposed to do.
It doesn't seem like it, though, because, like, up until this point, he had followed procedure, like, to the point, like every pilot does.
Yeah.
But it's
to the
still
T.
something they notice in the investigation that it seems weird.
Yeah, and more, is it a coincidence or deliberate that it happened at the changeover point when you're changing airspace? That's another thing to consider.
Yeah.
When you make up your mind about maybe what you think happened or didn't happen.
As they say in aviation terms, a whoopsie daisy.
Yes. So straight after this communication, almost immediately, like a few seconds later, a minute later, the signal just disappeared off the radar. In 3 radars at the same time. In Malaysia, Vietnam, and Thailand.
See, so that's weird. He doesn't do his job for 1 second. Somebody you'd expect to do his job, and like right after that, something happens. So that's a clear indicator something was happening right there.
And from 3 different radars, it was like in 3 different countries.
It was a general
one place.
thing. Yeah.
Okay.
But is this something you can disconnect in the actual plane?
Yep, I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
So how air traffic... Good question, though. So how air traffic control tracking works. So planes have this plane in particular, this type of plane, has 2 things called a transponder. They have 2 for this reason, like if one breaks, it has the other one. But these just send out pulses, basically like information. They just ping back and forward with the radar technology in the air traffic control, and it gives things like the tail number of the flight and some basic information.
Yeah.
And this type of plane has 2 because, if one malfunctions, you still have 1. So they basically can only surmise that, and for both of them to fail simultaneously, it had to be deliberately turned off manually.
Okay.
Because you can do that. You can manually turn them off.
Okay.
It's definitely not common procedure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so they do believe that someone manually turned off those devices.
Okay.
At this point, the Ho Chi Minh, because so the air traffic control in Vietnam's in contact with the one in Malaysia, so they know the changeover's happening. They've contacted each other and said, hey, you're going to take over this flight, like they're coming into your airspace. And after a little while, their Vietnamese air traffic control was getting curious as to why they hadn't heard from the plane. And they couldn't see it on the radar, and they hadn't had any communication attempts or anything.
Yeah.
So they actually... they first attempted to actually contact the plane shortly after 1:30, so a few minutes after it went dark, so to call. About 10 minutes after it just disappeared.
This was Vietnam?
Yeah, in Vietnam, yep, because they should be in Vietnamese airspace at this point.
Anytime you need me to read anything from this location, just send it to me. I'll gladly do the accents and voices for that.
No accents. Okay, so what they didn't hear back. So they actually contacted another plane sort of in the area and said, can you try contacting the plane? They have a special international air distress frequency that's only for emergencies.
Okay.
If you lose contact with air traffic control, so you can contact another plane.
Use it? This is only on the planes then?
Yeah, it seems it's only on the planes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's like a short distance thing or something like that.
It's like truckers using the CB and shit.
CB radio.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The captain of that other plane, he was like, yep, sure. And he said he actually managed to establish communications, but he only heard mumbling and static.
Okay.
Very weird.
Mm.
It should be clear communication. Apparently there was no lightning about, no rain, clear skies. There should be no interference from anything.
Okay.
So he only heard static and mumbling. And the transponder's being turned off, so getting a bit weird at this point. They tried making several more calls, including at 2:39 a.m. and at 7:13, which by that point the plane was almost expected in Beijing.
Jesus Christ. I mean, leave a lot of time in between, why don't you?
Yep.
Fucking hell.
The weird thing is, right, so planes also have a satellite tracker, I guess you call it. So every now and then they ping a satellite, and the satellite sends a signal down to in this case, it was a place in Perth, Australia, just like a aircraft monitoring system.
Yeah.
It was on before taking off, and what it does, it just logs on and basically sends a ping like, hey, yeah, I'm still alive. Like, here I am.
Yeah.
And then it sent, it sent nothing after taking off until after it had disappeared from the radar.
And where was it then?
After it disappeared from the radar, they got a ping to the satellite about 2 hours after takeoff, and it had gone the complete wrong direction, basically 180 degrees away from Beijing, from where it was supposed to be going, and was heading back across Malaysia instead of going up the eastern coast of Asia towards China.
Huh.
So, but they didn't know this at the time. It wasn't. They found this out in the investigation. It wasn't like a real time. Air traffic control doesn't see this.
But in the sense, if the plane was now technically back in Malaysian airspace, couldn't they have seen it? Or since the pinger isn't on, they can't read it?
Air traffic control can't read it because they use the transponders. They don't use reflective. Military uses like reflective, so it'll bounce off an object and bounce back.
Yeah.
But air traffic control just use the transponder signal to send back and forwards.
Yeah.
Kind of like a computer talking to each other, right? Like that's sort of how it works.
But wouldn't, like, in a sense, military find it weird that the plane was not...
We're getting right there where the military comes in now.
I'm sorry. I'm so smart. I keep getting ahead of
you. So greedy.
I'm on it tonight.
Okay, so yeah, the final radar data indicated the flight was on track at 35,000 feet, traveling at 471 knots, which is about 872 kilometers an hour speed. Perfectly fine. So the estimates were that the plane still had about 85% of its original fuel left, so it still could travel quite a distance. They still had a lot of fuel left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's disappeared from air traffic control radar, right? But the military uses the one reflective radar, which is the one where they send basically a pulse out, it bounces off an object and it comes back, and that's how they can track where it is. So the military still has it on their radar.
Okay.
The military immediately
wait, hold up. Just for a second. So the towers have lost any and all communication with them, but the military can still see them.
Military can still see them, yes.
So they can still track where they are. So up until this point, they are, for all intents and purposes, still alive. They just have a form of malfunction that may or may not have to do with aliens.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah, but I'm just curious. The military is still pinging them, so the military is still following them. So that must mean they're still there. Are they still moving?
Yeah,
or is it like one location where
No, they're still moving. So what the military noticed is almost immediately after they disappeared off the radar, they turned right off their intended track a little bit and then did a big turn to the left. So they went out to the right off their intended course and then basically turned like 270 degrees back.
So they were turning back. At that point, with the fuel they had left, would they've made a round trip?
Oh, easily. They've only used 15% of their fuel.
So they would have had fuel left, and like that was still a point of return.
Yeah. They still had 85 of their initial, but they still have the backup as well.
Yeah, they would have had, 6 hours worth of fuel, 6.5.
And how far, like how much time were they into the flight at that point?
Only about 45 minutes. 40 minutes.
Oh,
when they disappeared,
just the beginning of the trip. Like that's nothing.
Nope, nothing. So yeah, they
so even if engines would have failed and all that, because I'm like thinking technical stuff at this point. Even if engines would have failed, they still would have had pretty much all the time they needed to like get back safely, somewhat,
and they had altitude
at least
as well.
Make an emergency landing on the water.
Yes,
because they were over water at this point, weren't they?
Yes, they're over the South China Sea in the Gulf of Thailand.
Yeah, all right.
Sorry, I should have mentioned that. Good catch.
Yeah, that's fine.
So they bank out right, and then they do a turn to the left, like a big turn, so like 270 degrees, sort of back towards Malaysia.
Yeah.
Sort of the border where Malaysia and Thailand meet. They tracked them. And then they sped up a little bit. It could have been because of the Gulf Stream or whatever, like, the winds. Yeah. But they sped up a little bit. They gained about another 40 kilometers an hour in speed. And then but what was weird is their height was fluctuating between 31,000 feet and 33,000 feet. Like, they were going, up and down, which is very weird.
Mm.
They also notice a couple of weird anomalies that they think was just a bug in their radar because of how it works. They have pinging and it's reflecting back. Like the plane would, in a minute, would somehow drop like 20,000 feet and then go up and down.
Yeah.
So they think that was a bit of a bug in their system. But they kept tracking it. And at 1:52, the flight was detected. So this is 40 minutes after it went dark. It was detected on the other side of Malaysia from where it was heading. So it had crossed mainland Malaysia again, and it was southwest of the island of Penang, which is a big island in Malaysia. That is where the pilot was from. It's his hometown.
Okay.
So one of the theories is that he wanted to see his hometown one last time before he, killed himself, basically. That's a theory.
Mm-hmm.
So they kept tracking it. This is also backed up with the Thai noticed an unidentified aircraft, because this is sort of near the border with Thailand. So they were like, we had an unidentified aircraft over this way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that was that airplane, not what I was assuming.
And because of how the military the reason they use transponders for the air traffic control is because it sends information as well. It's not just here I am, it sends the code for the plane, the flight number. Whereas with radar for the military, it's just like a blip on the radar. They don't know what plane it is. They just know that there's something there. So it's crossed all the way to the other side of Malaysia, following some very weird headings. It was then also found in another civilian radar station out that way near Penang, the island of Penang. And then all of a sudden, on the edge of Malaysian airspace, the military lost it. And at that point, it was basically heading south towards Antarctica, towards the middle of the South Indian Ocean.
Okay.
Just straight. And at this point, it still had 5 or 6 hours worth of fuel left.
Jesus. Okay.
And at that point, it disappeared.
Okay.
Jeez.
And how many passengers in total together
239.
with 239 people just heading towards their doom.
Towards nothing. There's literally not even islands out there. It's nothing.
Maybe they just fall off the face of the earth. Like literally the flat earthers were right.
Maybe.
And
Maybe
they just flew off.
They're in space now.
Yeah.
They went over the ice wall.
Yeah.
But this is, to me, it's just mind-boggling. So this is all the Malaysian military, right? Because it was in Malaysian airspace, Malaysian Airlines flight, so they released this information. They asked the Thai military and other Asian and Indonesian military, do you have radar of this? And they were just like, oh, no, we don't know what you're talking about. We don't have radar, out there. Because they don't want to share with another country their radar capabilities.
Yeah, their capabilities, yeah.
So, 239 people went missing on this flight, and the other militaries were just like, we're not going to disclose any information. Almost certainly had information on this plane. Same with the Australian military as well, because where it ended up, they think where it crashed, was about 2,000 kilometers west of Western Australian coast, in the middle of the, Indian Ocean. There's, fucking nothing there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this plane is basically somewhere in fuck nowhere, around the coast of Perth, sort of.
Yeah, 2,000 kilometers off the West Australian coast.
But wouldn't the radar, the Australian military pick that up on their radar?
Yes, Australia has a long-range over-the-horizon radar system called JAWN, which has an official range of 3,000 kilometers. Again, official range, not real range. Probably real range much larger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As it so happened, wasn't in operation the night the plane disappeared.
Wasn't in operation.
Wasn't in operation, yep. I just need to clarify one thing. I just double checked. The Indonesian military did actually confirm that they did catch it on their radar heading south, but they didn't say like for how long and the last known signal that they found the plane. They wouldn't disclose that information, but they just said that they saw it. So at this point, so just so you geographically, Malaysia is north of Indonesia. Indonesia is south of Malaysia, and the plane is supposed to be going north of Malaysia to China. So they are literally, like, they've gone way past Malaysia at this point. They're, like, on a crash course for the middle of the ocean, which is where they assume they met up. Went down, sorry. So do you remember earlier I said about the satellite and how it logged on again and, like, pinged the satellite communication system?
The one they had in Perth. Oh.
Yep, exactly, the one they had in Perth, Australia. So at 2:25 a.m., so hour 40 minutes after takeoff, they got another log-on request. So it's like someone had turned off the satellite and turned it back on at this point. Yeah. Or it had somehow turned itself back on, they don't know. And then what this did is every hour it would check in with the satellite and send a... But it doesn't track. The signal doesn't track. It's basically just like, oh, hey, are you still, like, alive? Ping. It has no, like, GPS coordinates or anything. Okay. So what they actually did in the investigation is they worked out by the time delay and the alleged sort of path that the plane was on, they could work out roughly where it was every time it would ping. Yeah. But they don't actually know for certain.
Okay. So did they end up finding out if it did go on that straight course where they thought it was going?
Yeah, they're like 99% sure. They narrowed it down to a 25,000 square kilometer search area.
How the fuck does that happen?
Good question. Very good question. It was a combination of, we're going to get to a bit later, but they found some debris in East Africa, on the east coast of Africa, like about a year and a half after the plane went down, 16 months, I think it was.
Yeah. It just moved over.
Yeah, with the ocean currents. And they'd already done modeling. So they made, using the satellite ping information, they like made radius like circles. Yeah. Around the Earth of where like it's going to be somewhere on this point, depending on if it went north, south, east, west, whatever. But they sort of identified a ring where they're like, we're pretty sure it was here. And if with the ocean current, it matched, like, you know, the debris that washed up in Africa,
it matched where
the simulation of where it could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the same time frame.
Where they suspected it would have crashed, it like the debris where it ended up, would have matched up with it. Yeah, okay.
Yep. So they did, basically some smart people did a bunch of simulations and math and were like, they think by now they've narrowed it down to a 25,000 square meter patch of the ocean.
Jesus
which sounds big, but they searched 4.6 million square kilometers searching for it.
Fuck!
To put it into perspective, India is the world's 7th largest country, and this area is 40% larger than India.
God.
And this is on the ocean, so they were doing underwater and surface level. So they sent boats and planes, and they sent remote controlled submersibles down to like look at the ocean floor. Yeah. They tried to use like sonar equipment to see if it picked up any like explosion, like shock waves. They found one thing that they originally thought could have been when the plane hit the water from like 3 different or 5 different monitoring stations underwater. But after like listening back to it, they realized it was probably some like tectonic movement on the Earth's plate. They didn't think it was an explosion. They're like, nah.
It was like the blip.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys probably don't know what a blip is.
No. But I'm going to say yes.
It's information for another episode.
Yes, exactly. So the plane crashed March 8th, disappeared, of 2014. And between March 18th and April 28th, 2014, it took about 2 weeks for them to roughly work out where the crash area was. And then from Australia, because it was in Australian territory, so Australia took charge of the investigation. They sent 19 military vessels and 345 like sorties, like missions by military aircraft. Searched that whole area, the 4.6 million square kilometers or 1.8 million square miles.
Yeah.
In the final phase, they started looking at like the underwater, like ocean floor monitoring stuff. And at this point,
Can you just imagine having the biggest search of a lifetime being given to the only country in the world that has such fucking bad internet connection? It's like, yeah, we sent an email. Yep. It'll get to you in 3 to 4 business days. It's like
should have sent a pigeon, sir.
Because for the people that are unaware, Australia has such bad internet.
Shocking.
I mean, yeah. Snake mail is preferred in Australia.
Yeah, that's fucking horrible.
They use kangaroos to send their letters. Ask Alex.
I wish they did. It would actually be better.
Yeah.
But, okay. Oh, actually, that's a good point. You said the biggest search ever. This was easily the most expensive aircraft crash investigation ever.
Of course it was.
$155 million it's cost.
Yeah. That seems something Australia would do. It's like 150 million. Did it cost?
55 million. 155 million US dollars.
There's definitely 100 million that would straight went into the pockets of the politicians in Australia.
Yep.
Zip buster criminals on an island, for fuck's sake.
What I don't get either is, like, I don't know how many Australians were on this flight, but I don't think there was maybe a small handful. And Australia paid 32% of the bill. China only paid 10%, even though the majority of the people on the plane were Chinese.
Yeah.
And Malaysia paid 58%.
But I think it has to do that the pilot was Malaysian, and obviously something happened with the pilot. Like, either...
Well, allegedly.
How was this never a UN thing, is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I don't know.
How did the United Nations not get involved in something that went that far? I mean, it was supposed to go from one place to the other, but ended up in fucking Australia, but debris ended up in fucking Africa. It was all over the world. Like, the UN should have jumped on this case, like, in an instant.
And it officially got called off the search in January 17, 2017. So almost 3 years of searching.
Well, good effort. At least good effort. I mean...
Yeah. They tried. And, 86% of the cost, you have to remember, I read something, it was, the average depth around where they think it crashed was 3,000 meters, the ocean depth.
Yeah.
So, to, search the bottom of the ocean is expensive.
And plus, you got the whole world watching as well. I mean, I can imagine if no newspaper in the world would have talked about this, those 200 and something people would have just went into the abyss, and that would have been that. But I think a big part of why it was spent so much there was spent so much money on it is because it was even us in Belgium, what the fuck does Belgium have to do with an airplane crash in Malaysia?
I'll tell you what.
It was what?
I'll tell you what.
You tell me why.
Okay. Well, for example, in my something funny around when this happened. So this was 2014. At that point, I had moved to Australia, but I was planning on moving back home.
Yeah.
So this was in March.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then we had the other incident 2 months later where the Ukrainians bombed the other flight.
Yeah.
A few days before I was taking off. And I was flying through the same airspace. You know how fucked that was?
That's true.
And that's the thing, it affects everyone in that sense.
Honestly, I've been on holidays with my family on airplanes. I always get drunk. I never remember the plane ride. I'm okay with planes and shit like that, but I prefer to be drunk because if anything happens and I know the people that I love are next to me, I'm gonna fucking freak out. I'm gonna slap an ancient fucking wheelchair nun if I have to. But when I'm drunk, I'm okay. So I tend to get drunk when I'm on airplanes. I usually order the way too expensive whiskeys to get
Let's do an episode of that about how people behave on planes. And that's another episode.
You just
how about we wrap this bitch up because it's getting...
Hey. We got the one last bit to go.
Yeah, but that's what I mean.
We're done.
Yeah.
But yes, so just to finish it off, we now need to talk to the final, where we're going to leave it for today, and that's where the debris washing up. So we've established a plane crash somewhere in the Indian Ocean. We've mentioned it briefly. Debris washed up in Eastern Africa a year and 3 months to a year and a half later. So by October 2017, 30 pieces of debris have been washed up in East Africa, in Mozambique, an island called Reunion, which is actually where the first piece was found, and in South Africa. They found, and I think Madagascar as well, 30 pieces that they think belonged to the plane. Of these,
and what a lovely place to find pieces of an airplane than to find it in Reunion.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I mean...
there's a really offensive joke there somewhere.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go
but
there.
I'm not going to make it.
Of these 30 pieces, there's 18 that they have, like, they haven't been able to confirm exactly, but they're, like, very, very likely from this flight.
Same type of plane and metals.
Yeah, and, like, you know, half of the serial number matches, but it's damaged in the middle or whatever. They have 3 pieces, like, 100% confirmed. They've matched the manufacturing codes, the serial numbers, the dates. It is. And then there's another 9 pieces that are, like, likely but hard for them to say, but it is from that type of plane.
Okay.
Which is important. Like I said earlier in the episode, there's only ever been, like, 7 incidents with this plane. One of them got blown up over Ukraine, so it can't be that.
Yeah.
3 of them, I think, caught fire, and I think another one crashed in France or Switzerland. It can't be that.
Yeah.
So it can only really be this plane. But they can't say with 100% certainty that it is.
Yeah.
Another important thing is they saw no sign of an explosion or anything, so there's no terror. They don't think it was a terror. They just think it just cruised until it ran out of fuel and just plopped into the ocean.
Imagine being on a flight because
that
it's like
fucks me.
Because if you get hit by lightning, you drop. Yeah, sure. If you if you get bombed,
the wing fucking falls off.
But you're
like,
just like cruising along, and it's like, where are we going? Like,
drinking your whiskey like Andy, and all of a sudden, the ocean looks pretty close from up here. Shouldn't we be in Beijing by now? Oh, yes, and one actually last thing that I forgot to mention. The last satellite point, ping, was 1 hour and 40 minutes after it was supposed to be in Beijing. 6 hours south of where they lost radar contact.
Yeah, so completely the opposite way they pinged. And by the way, for the people unknowing, like I would like to keep in account that all sorts of people are listening to this podcast. For the people that don't know what a ping is basically it's a blip. It's like sends coordinates from one location to a database where they just store it, and
or just do the simple fact: Google the shit. You have a fucking phone. Why should we be explaining
Don't be that degrading to our listeners, Ali.
Yeah,
I mean,
Jesus, we have all sorts of people
to keep an account that we are, catering to a bunch
your
of
last
fucking
episode
retards.
when you talked about shit and called them, I don't know, all sorts of names? I think you're not the person to talk to me about.
Okay, this is already long enough as it is.
I just call them retards, all of them.
Jesus Christ.
I mean...
All right, well, yes, and on that note, so the first piece found, as I said, was found in the island of Reunion. It was a flaperon, which is a part of the plane on the back of the wing that's used to, like, control the the roll of the plane. If it wants to turn, or if it needs to slow down, they go up and they slow down.
Did they ever find a phalange?
Phalange?
They didn't have phalange? For the people that are listening, Friends reference right there. There's something wrong with the left phalange, and then Phoebe freaked out on the plane and made the plane not go up. All right, let's continue.
Who the fuck watches Friends?
God.
Seriously?
Yeah. No, not me.
I do.
This was found in July 2015 in Saint Andre at 4,000 kilometers west.
Okay.
Of the search zone.
Yes.
And again, this matched the ocean current patterns on the simulation. So, And that was confirmed. That is part of the plane. They looked at the serial numbers, 100% part.
Okay, cool.
The French found that out. For some reason, they sent that part to Toulouse in France.
Okay.
For an investigation. They came back in September 2015, confirmed, yep, it's it.
Yep.
Then in December 2015, a guy called Liam Lotter in Mozambique found a gray. He just it's a gray floating thing on the beach.
What is the gray floating thing in the floor that
literally,
I find here?
He took it home.
Yeah.
Like thinking, oh, cool, like a, I don't know, memento or whatever. And then only after reading about another guy that found another part of the plane in February 2016 did he realize, like, oh shit, maybe this is part of the plane. And then he contacted authorities after having it for 3 months. And sure enough, they found out that, it was a part of the plane. A guy in South Africa, a archaeologist, found a piece of the engine cover with the Rolls-Royce logo, because it's a Rolls-Royce plane engine.
Yeah.
Again,
An
almost confirmed.
Archaeologist of all people.
Yeah, he was just down at the beach and he found
Imagine looking for fucking gigantic triangle sculptures and finding an engine. What the fuck is this, huh?
I didn't know South Africans
I demand
were French.
he's still French, even if
Aren't
he's
they
in
Dutch?
Egypt.
Shouldn't you just speak like you fucking Dutch?
I do not know, huh? Let's see some snails and talk about it.
All right, well, yeah, look, okay, that sort of wraps it up. They found all over Africa, 4,000, 5,000 kilometers away.
And all the pieces that they found were in the supposed area where they would have guessed they found it, had the place of the crash been in the location where they thought it would have crashed. So basically, it would be safe to say that the supposed landing or crash site is the exact place where it would have crashed or landed.
But it's also, 3,000 meters deep ocean in the Indian Ocean, which is like the most dangerous ocean, I'm pretty sure, in the world, because it's got huge ocean currents. You're pretty
sure, or you're sure? We gotta get the facts here, Alex.
I am 95% sure, because it's a warm ocean where it meets the Southern Ocean, so you get warm and cold water mix, and they get like huge fucking catastrophic waves and storms out there. So who knows?
Yeah.
But I hope this is the introduction. Like I said, next time we're going to get into the real what they've pieced together, and I'm hoping I'll try to make it that bit shorter so we can get into the conspiracies. So try and do it in one.
You know what? I'm gonna
episode.
I'm gonna go ass deep in this conspiracy shit.
Good.
I'm gonna find everything I can find on aliens and talk about it on the next episode. This is gonna be amazing.
No, but what if the radar technology from this company was an alien technology that was stolen from the aliens, so when the plane crashed they just beamed it out of the water,
bam, kablamo, Ali.
They literally can't find a fucking plane.
I know in the beginning of this episode I said me and Ali are gonna crack this case. Now I'm referring to Alex. Me and Alex are gonna crack this case.
You're a doubter.
Finally Alex is beginning to see the truth.
Yeah, it was
finally.
This just boggles my mind how a fucking plane just vanishes.
Yeah.
So yeah, 239 people.
How could it otherwise happen? There's. I mean, even if everything went fuck up technically, they shouldn't have gone the other way around and turned back. Even if they didn't have any fucking satellite to look at or to see where they were going, they would have had a visual of this is the ocean. They are nowhere near where they should have gone. And even with an experienced pilot like that, there's no way of accounting for what happened.
Nope.
As far as the trajectory goes, because I'd imagine these planes have somewhat of an indication of, you came from there, so if you turn back that way, even if all other communication fails, they would have this fail-safe that says you come from there, so if you turn around you can get there.
Yeah, I think they still have manual
internally they have this external fucking all
they
this.
They probably have this thing
black
called a compass on the plane that they can see on which fucking direction. If I can steer a ship on fucking Sea of Thieves, I'm pretty sure a pilot that's been flying for over 2 years knows where to go.
But it's important because a lot of people assume everything now is automatic. But they would still have manual tools.
They have to, because
actually,
in case...
Good point. It's not the autopilot that caused this, because there was a belief at first, but Boeing came out and said, the angle the military, I said they turned?
Yeah.
You could only do that manually.
Yeah, Boeing was the autopilot can't turn.
You can't
not
turn
even close
that
to that sharp. Yeah, it had to be a human.
Yeah, I'd imagine. I know autopilot. I've seen it on a couple of things. Throughout my life, I've seen autopilot work, and autopilot is never a sharp directly round angle. It's always a wide fucking spread fucking thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that. But okay, let's
wrap this
one up. It's been a long one. Yeah, I hope it was interesting anyway.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Hope you're ready to crack open the alien conspiracy next episode.
Fuck.
Andy's got a fucking Lego plane. See, if you join live on air, you can see these things that now you're just hearing about that you have no context to. Jesus Christ. All right, and on that bombshell.
This was me mimicking a blowjob from a plane. So if you know, you're not in the Discord group, so you can't fucking, you can't see that. So click that fucking link in the description down below, and it's an app you can download on your telephone or on your laptop, computer, PC. So just click that shit and just join us live, hang out with us, and we will talk to you afterwards and call you sacks of shit, because that's what you are.
Ali.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget to give us a follow on Instagram, even though we haven't been active for a while, but still. So that is @random.podcast. So at.random.podcast.
And on
Look
Twitter, we are @_randompod. But honestly, the best thing you can do for the podcast, just send it to your friend. Send it to someone. Someone asks on Twitter, or a friend asks, oh, hey, what's a cool podcast? If you like what you hear, just send it to them.
I wouldn't even do that. I just, I talk to strangers on a train and just go to them and say, like, have you heard of this podcast I'm listening to? And just scream the name in their ears. I'm sure, these are the people that actually start listening after that. These are the people we want.
Yeah. I have heard that yelling at people on public transport is well received.
And I found it very effective during my research into the alien episodes.
Okay. I want to go now. Bye.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.